Today we're making a vegetable stir fry. Sometimes I'll call it an empty your pantry stir fry, or sometimes everything but the kitchen sink stir fry. Because this is the time to use the items that have been lingering in your refrigerator or that have been in your pantry that you may have purchased to make another dish and either chose not to use or, as in my case, forgot to put in that dish. So let's get started. This is the list of ingredients we use today. Feel free to use any vegetables that you have on hand. Your only limit for this dish is your imagination. So now it's time to cook. So in a pan with hot oil, add the mushrooms. I like to start with the mushrooms first. That way we can get some browning on the mushrooms and also get them to release their flavor, develop a little fond on the pan, and that'll just help give your stir fry a deeper, richer flavor. So once you get the sliced mushrooms in the pan, just let them sit for a good 5-6 minutes undisturbed. Don't touch them. This will let the mushrooms start to brown, and it'll also help release some of the water. The more you move them around, the more they're going to steam rather than brown. So after about 5 or 6 minutes, turn the mushrooms over. Again, you want to get them in a single layer and just allow them to brown on the second side and continue to release moisture. You're going to cook them on the second side for, again, about the same amount of time, a good 5-6 minutes. Once those 5 or 6 minutes are up, then you can stir it around a little bit to try to get a little more even browning on the mushrooms. Allow them to cook for another 4 minutes or so. When you're satisfied with your mushrooms, you can add the onions and the peppers. I like to cut them in larger chunks because I do like the texture. It's perfectly fine to cut them into smaller dice if that's your preference. I just prefer biting into it and getting a little bit of a crunch. So we used white onions, red bell pepper, and green bell pepper for this recipe. In my case, I'm going to cook these for about 6 or 7 minutes because they are in larger chunks. If you choose to use smaller dice, then reduce the cooking time until you get the desired texture on your peppers. Feel free to stir and toss the vegetables around as much as you feel you need to keep them coated and keep them moving and cooking in the pan. We're not looking for any browning here. We have the browning from the mushrooms and the juice from the mushroom, which is going to help with the richness of the sauce. We just need to cook the vegetables to your desired preference. Once you've reached that point, make a well in the center and add garlic, ginger if you have it. I didn't happen to have any ginger today. And in my case, of course, because it's me, something spicy. So I added some serrano chilies. Allow those to sit for 30-40 seconds until you can smell the garlic. Then you can go ahead and stir those in. So basically, this is your basic stir fry at this point. After about a minute, you can start adding whatever else you might have in your pantry. In my case, I had baby corn and water chestnuts. I added 1 can of each, drained. And one of the reasons I love water chestnuts is because they absorb the flavor of the sauce, but they stay crunchy. So as you're eating your stir fry, you always get this crunch in there, no matter how long you cook them. So cook this for another 3-4 minutes just to get the water chestnuts and the corn heated through. And it was at this point I realized my pan was not big enough for this. There was no way I was going to be able to add any rice and be able to stir fry it. So after changing pans to a larger pan, I was able to move all the vegetables around and let them cook a little more to get warmed all the way through. Then it's time to add the rice. So when you add the rice, make sure you break up all the lumps. As with any fried rice, you would like your rice to be at least a day old so it's dried up a bit. So when you add your rice, try to break up as many of the clumps as you can at this point. You can add some black pepper as we did here, or white pepper if that's your preference, or omit it completely. It's entirely up to you. After you let the pepper cook for about a minute, if in fact you've added it, it's time to add the sauce. So in my basic stir fry sauce, I would have used oyster sauce. This is a vegetarian dish, so I threw some hoisin sauce in there instead. The hoisin sauce has a completely different flavor profile. It's going to be sweeter, but it's going to add some additional richness and color to the dish. So stir your sauce in, continue to cook it, breaking up the lumps of the rice if there are any left. Cook this until most of the sauce has been absorbed into the rice. When you're satisfied with that, turn off the heat and add some toasted sesame oil. Toasted sesame oil should be added off the heat at the end because you really don't like to cook it because it'll lose some of its flavor. It has a very strong flavor, so you don't need very much. And now that you've cooked it, it's time to serve it, eat it, and enjoy it. And as we said in the beginning, this is a good way to empty your pantry out, to use some vegetables that you might have bought for another purpose or been sitting around for a while that you just haven't used. Now, when you bite into this, the sauce is really rich. The water chestnuts and the peppers still have a bite to them and a crunch to them. It tastes really good. The richness of the sauce is partly due to the mushrooms. The hoisin sauce adds a deep flavor, makes it a little sweeter than if you're adding oyster sauce. This was a really good, quick, easy meal, and I hope you enjoy it.
On behalf of the flight crew, thank you for flying with us and have a pleasant day.